Yeah, and I'm Alex Romero. I'm from California, but I live out here in Colorado. I was in the Marine Corps. My MOS was 3531. That's motor T vehicle operator. Was stationed out in Camp Pendleton. That's in California, over by San Diego, in between San Diego and LA. And my service connection would be, so I have a back injury uh, from the service. And what I'm doing now is currently just got an interview for AutoZone, so we'll see if I'm going to work there here soon.
Hey, awesome, Alex.
And I like to smoke.
Awesome.
Yeah, you got to
Okay.
say one thing like you like to do.
All right. Open that. All right. I'm Beth. I'm from Colorado. I'm hanging out in Florida right now, but trying to move to North Carolina and make that my hometown. I was in the Marine Corps, did about 10 years. I was also a 3531 motor transport, but I also did fuel operations as well. Stationed in North Carolina, but I did 3 tours to Iraq. Let's see. Well, I told you about did about 10 years, but I'm service connected for PTSD, but should be connected for other things, but that's my main priority. And my favorite thing to do is pretty much nothing but hang out with my dogs and talk to myself. All
Very nice.
right.
All right. Introduction. My name is Jared Brody. I served 6 years in the United States Army as a cavalry scout. Made it up to the rank of E5 sergeant. Um, my home will always be 1st Armored Division, but I got attached to a different myriad of units. 48th Combat Infantry Brigade for Afghanistan. Served another deployment in Iraq. Um, uh, After all that, I got pretty fucked up. So I can't do a whole lot of stuff, but I try to make the best of it. Um, PTSD and all that kind of shit. And I do have a service animal. His name is Sergeant Goodboy. He's kind of turned things quite a bit around, able to get out and do shit. So that's really cool. And one thing I like to do, I like to eat pussy.
Talk to bears and talk to bears.
Oh man, that's good stuff. Um,
Nolan.
Now no one's trying to think,
It's
how
like
can I
shit, now I
top
gotta
that?
think harder. It's gotta match
I,
that up.
I also like to eat pussy too. My name is Nolan Cochran. I'm originally from California. I grew up there, enlisted out of California. Now I'm out in Arkansas, where it's a lot better. Um, Branch of service, I was active duty Marine Corps. My MOS was 0331 Infantry Machine Gunner. Uh, Duty station, I was at Camp Horno, Camp Pendleton, where the 1st Marine Regiment is. I was with 1st Battalion, 4th Marine Regiment. My overseas deployments, I did one non-combat deployment right after 9/11, and then I did another combat, or then I did my first combat and only combat deployment to Iraq in 2003 for Operation Iraqi Freedom, the initial push up to Baghdad. Uh, that was back in 2003. Um, since I got out, I was actually wounded in combat. So since I got out, I've done whatever jobs physically could. Went to gunsmithing school, did a lot of different things in the gunsmithing area. And now I'm fully service connected, retired. Um, I have probably a dozen or more different claims and disability that I'm service connected 100%. Brings me up there. And unlike, I also like doing wood carving and making wood art and things like that now in my spare time, other than doing mowing lawns and chores like that. And that's pretty much me.
So let's see.
Guess I'll start off with my biggest struggle.
Yeah.
One of the number one drivers to go to the VA or push it to the next level of learning something and trying something new to help my care better myself is being a husband and a father of two daughters. Since my daughters were born, I did a lot of stay-at-home schooling. I've probably stayed homeschooled 8 out of the 11 years that my kids have been home. Well, I'm sorry, a stay-at-home dad. I did homeschooling for 3 years out of those 8 years that I've been a stay-at-home dad. My daughters are now in public school once we moved to Arkansas because we did not trust the public schools in Colorado, which was a very dangerous place. Let's just not say for children, especially elementary children nowadays. The games have changed. And when one of my daughters was in kindergarten, the other one was in Head Start, she went to her first hide in place drill, shelter in place drill. And she told me that the teacher put them all in the corner and gave them a sucker. And I'm like, fuck me. So we took them out. I was like, okay, I was looking for work again. And I was like, fuck that noise. My wife, she went full time instead of me working full time. And we just bring them home and did homeschooling. And up to this point, I had a good relationship with my daughters. They are young little girls, and they're now 6 and 5. And I started doing homeschooling. And after 3 years, now it's 9 and 8. And I'm having issues, big issues with my daughters. And I went to the VA and I did what is called cognitive processing therapy. And this is a program that I didn't take serious the first time. And then I took it serious a second time. And that made me realize that because of my dyslexia issues that I had in the 1980s and 90s when I went to school, I had to be in resource for reading. And because I was in resource for reading, I had to go through bullying, I guess you would call it now, kids busting balls and shit like that. You just got to be, you're going to be dumb. You got to be tough. Oh, we lost Brody.
Okay.
And he'll probably jump back in a minute. And so I was really having issues with my daughters not getting their education the way I planned it. And they were falling behind in their education, in their literacy. Their math and social studies and things like that were good. But just like me, they were falling behind in literacy. And I got super fucking scared. And then so when I get scared, I had my PTSD and I get angry and I'm going super fast on, losing my temper when they don't listen the first or second or third time. And little girls going to be little girls, especially when they're homeschooling and we have them at a desk, in the dining room and they're doing their work. And like, I'll go and I have to do laundry or do the dishes or make dinner or whatever it may be. Or I'm just tired and I want to sit down and I want to watch a TV or something like that. The minute you turn your back on these girls, you can't do any of it. And you can't be a 100% teacher when you're also a stay-at-home dad doing the chores because my wife's working in a good company and making money. And if she stayed home, she wouldn't be making any money. But me staying home and her working, that's 2 incomes now. So we went on that route and it got worse and worse and worse. And thank God we moved down to Arkansas where we can trust the schools because the teachers pack, the janitors pack. The police in a small community where there's probably only 5 or 6 cops have cops in the morning at the schools, in the afternoon when they get picked up. The police are in school zones catching motorists. They're the police stations right within a block of the middle school and elementary school where the number one thing you need to protect is, right? Your children, the community's children. And it's just so much more wonderful and safer. And the problem is even though now they're into school, I have now lost that short fuse. And I am continuously like, you're smarter than this. You're better than this. You already know the answer to this question. Why are you doing this? You did not think before you act. And it's taken, 2 times doing CPT. It's taken a lot of different heavy medications from the VA that give you really bad side effects. I'm not going to go into the list of them because they pretty much went through the whole ball game in it. And then, you know, I've been getting more and more crabby and frustrated and bitter over the years because my body's been breaking down even more from my combat wounds, and more importantly, from the limp that I've had from my combat wounds. And this has been a continuously problem. So how do I better myself in being a father and a husband, or a father and a dad, I'm sorry, a father and a husband to my wife and kids? Because, it's, I don't want to lose my wife. I don't want to lose my kids. And more importantly, like, I grew up with so many Vietnam veterans, children in the 80s and 90s.
Mm.
And when we were all reconnected on Facebook, and now we're adults and we have kids and so on and so forth, everybody's talking about their abusive father. He yelled too much, this and that, and they're calling, not what we were called abusive back then, where you hit someone, but now it's verbal abuse, right? Verbal abuse. And I started realizing, like, at a point with my kids that stay at home, when I started losing my shit, I started cussing at them. Or I started cussing around them, I should say. Like, what the fuck, what the fuck, how could you forget this? Who didn't fucking flush the toilet? I'm not saying you stupid little bitch or anything like
Yeah.
that. I mean, that would be so wrong, but I'm cussing around my kids, or I'm cussing in the sentences when I'm talking or asking questions of my kids.
So
And
projection.
it was when they were getting older, and when they were having their own personalities form.
Mhm.
You start to see them not as a little girl. I see them as a person. And if I start treating them like a person, then I'm treating them like I would treat any other person if that's a dumbass, but they're not dumbasses. They're just kids,
Yeah.
they're learning. And my wife's always like, well, let's call your mom and see what she has to say. When I say the kids shouldn't do this and that and blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. But that's pretty much like what my problem was, that I was really having issues with. The whole physical aspect of dealing with the VA is one thing, but doing it on the mental health side, it is such a goddamn chore to make them sons of bitches do what they're supposed to be doing.
I do have a question that might help you maybe figure this out. Do you feel like it's because you're surrounded by females where you kind of grew around males so much? Or do you feel like is your responsibility so strict to these girls and you just want the best, but you feel like maybe inside you're failing them? And so you project it out onto them as to why they're not doing what you say? So it makes you feel like a
So
failure, maybe?
I had 3 older sisters, and I love my sisters, and I love my mom. So I've always had a good relationship with the female aspect, and including in, like, high school, I hung out with some girls and stuff like that here and there that were in groups, and I mean, I've always had a good repertoire with the female aspect, and it was never anything like that. But I found out over the years, was me being the youngest with my brother, we didn't see my dad raise those girls. And so we didn't see how my dad interacted with an 8, 9, 10-year-old sisters, because I had 3 older sisters. And so what it was I found out that, like, my dad, I'm raising them like my dad would raise them. Without the cussing. He didn't cuss.
Right.
But he would definitely say things like, to a 9-year-old, like, if your grandfather was alive, he would have killed you by now, or he would have
Yeah,
beaten you
right.
to death or something like that, when you really upset him. And I'm so proud of my father, because he broke the chain of physical abuse. Like, he did not get physical like that. And so with my daughters, I feel like I need to try to break the verbal abuse now. And with being with PTSD, the Marine Corps, because the Marine Corps is bipolar. You can't tell me you can't be an NCO in the Marine Corps without being bipolar, right? Like a fucking NCO says it once, just fucking once, and he ain't gonna say it twice. Like if you didn't hear him the first time, you better speak the fuck up right then and right now, right? Everybody that is an NCO in the Marine Corps is bipolar as fuck, right? So the Marine Corps teaches you how to be bipolar.
That's true.
You lose your shit. You're supposed to lose your shit. You know what I mean? Who the fuck is that calm Clint Eastwood reading you the riot act? Like
They
if they're
taught
reading
us
you the
how to
riot act,
be aggressive. They taught us to be aggressive. And now we're
right?
trying to break that cycle when it's like instilled in us. I know what you mean. I see it in myself a lot.
So it's not fair that I had to go through all this. But it is fair because I chose this lifestyle. I signed the contract. So I'm just trying to deal with it. I'm not trying to be bitter about anything because I volunteered. I wasn't drafted or anything like that. You know, I chose the military. I did 6 years of military school before I went in. I've talked hundreds of hours to veterans before I even talked to a recruiter from family members, World War II and up kind of deal, right? So I I knew what I was getting into. The problem is nobody ever talked about the mental aspect of what it does to your brain, how it changes. And my dad, he was in the military, but he didn't go to combat. He was in the Coast Guard. So even though he broke the chain of physical abuse, he didn't really have too much of a verbal abuse. But because I went in the Marine Corps, he was a good Christian man, you know. But because I went in the Marine Corps, I learned how to be bipolar as fuck. And I learned how to like cuss in every way and manner in any type of sentence. We can slip those fucks into anything. Um, so it I don't want my daughters to be strippers, smoking the crack pipe. You know, I want my daughters to go to trade school, college, get a fucking career. Like my dad always said, don't get a job, get a career. You know, I was always chasing a career as a cripple when I got out of the Marine Corps. And now that I've just pretty much given up on it, I'm just like, okay, well, now that I'm just a cripple, like, okay, then I'm just going to be selfish and I'm not going to try to justify, oh, I have a part-time job because I feel like a piece of shit staying at home and not working because that's the mindset that I was brought up with a father that was born in 1938.
I hear you. And this is
Yep.
something I've been learning through that little girl I was helping back out in Denver. I always used to do the same thing when I first met her. Is I used to scold her, like, why don't you know better? And this is when she was like 5. And I was watching her dad do the same thing. And I'm like, let's take it back to the military. What did I used to do with my troops? I didn't always just bark at them. I used to do it with them while I'm showing them. And then they just kind of like monkey see, monkey do. And then they get that repetition to the point it becomes routine for them. And I feel like maybe that's the same thing we need to do for children is just be there, not just telling them what to do, but showing them so that way they're like the monkey see, monkey do. Okay, if this is how he's doing, I need to mimic this. And maybe that's a step you can start to take into maybe understanding your children more.
So my dad was the same way, and that's how I'm treating him actually. Like
Good.
everything is a learning experience. You know, if I'm making eggs, hey, come here, I want to show you something. You know, this is how you do this. This is how you do that. They're not going to be cooking eggs for a couple more years because it's a range stove, you know, and I would prefer them being a little older when they're doing that, but they're already like my daughter's making mac and cheese. So not a skillet, but like she can boil a pot of water and make her own mac and cheese. And that was kind of was the problem 4 or 5 years ago when I started to really see them become who they were. They're separated. They're now an individual. And because of that, you know, you start getting in the mentality of you're smarter than this. You start treating them like a teenager before they're a damn teenager. And then I'm pretty sure when they're a teenager, I'm gonna start treating them like an adult before they're an adult. And that's not good. I have to treat them the proper respect of their age is kind of like an issue, I think.
Mhm.
I used to tell my girlfriend's kids, every year on their birthday, I just give them that little friendly reminder. Hey, now you like, for example, like, oh, you're 9 years old now. Guess what? I'm gonna start treating you like you're 10. So start acting like you're 10 because then I started just throwing out, these years go by pretty quick. I don't know how fast they're going for you, kiddo, but I'm like, dude, just 2 years ago you were only 7, 8. Now you're turning 9. So I'm gonna, I kind of instill that to them, like, that's how people are gonna start. Because once you hit that limit, you just explain to them. Like I remember always being, what's the term? I guess lectured. Yeah, lectured at
Mhm.
about, oh well, when you're 18, you're out. When you're 16, you're out of my house. You're not my problem. Blah blah blah. So I just try to more like be not like that to them. Just be more like in a positive, not like a, well, if you want to say positive, I'd say more positive, where it's like I'm not like lecturing them. I'm just like friendly reminder, kiddo.
Yeah.
Every year when you get older, there's more that's expected out of you, is what I was trying to explain to them. And then once you hit that 18 line, yeah, there's really no excuse for stuff. You're an adult now. You're looked at, and I explain it to them like this too. I'm like, you're not like an adult because you're still a kid and you're young, but in the eyes of the government and the laws, you're looked at as an adult. So you do something, and then of course with the shit that I had go on, that was especially another. See, look, this is another reminder, kiddo, that when you fuck up and you lose your shit, society doesn't give a fuck what you've been through or what you've done or where you've been at. It's all about accountability for your actions. And that, like I
I
said, it's not more of a lecture. It's kind of like a, hey, look at my situation. Think about what you're gonna do or say or how you're gonna act when you're somewhere before you start doing it. And then, that anger problem is a thing that her youngest daughter had. So I was like, hey, you always got to check that shit. I got to do it on a daily basis sometimes. But it's just one of those things that, like you were saying there, bit Nolan,
yeah.
treating them about their age, that they are, so they know that, right, things aren't like they used to be anymore.
Well, because they can
You're reaching
traumatize
that.
them. If you treat them too old too quick, it can traumatize them. And I don't want to traumatize them. I want them to keep their innocence as long as possible. And it's so sad when I hear them learning about this or that in the world, especially now that they're in public schools with bratty little boys, you know, um, who don't know how to keep their hands to themselves because their daddy didn't explain to them the rules yet
Right.
or something, like in middle school already. And like I didn't see that with my sisters when, like, cause like when they were in middle school, I wasn't paying attention, and like by the time I was paying attention to like other things, like I'm already a teenager, my sisters already pretty much moved out. So I'm not really, didn't pay attention to how my parents dealt with those things. And so I'm kind of learning a little bit on my own because they're not boys, they're girls. So I can't be so rough with them because I'll tell you what, man, it kind of sucks when little girls start crying. Kind of breaks
Right.
your heart a little.
Yeah, that explains why my parents were so soft. Because, like, I mean, I don't have kids, but going back to the aspect of my father figures, whether it's my biological or my stepdad, they were more strict onto me than they were my four other brothers because they were so concerned about me doing the same things you're worried about. They didn't want me doing drugs. They didn't want me being around boys, this and that. And they were so strict to the point it actually hurt me more than it helped me. They weren't teaching me the right ways. They were just telling me to be afraid all the time. So I think that's where today in society we need to change that a little bit. Teach us why it's bad. Show us what the right way is. Because I think with myself, I think that's where I'm still struggling today. I mean, better now, I should say. But back then, even in my mid 30s, I was still trying to figure out what the right way was to do this. And that's why I struggled in relationships. So that's why I feel like I agree with you. Hit it harder when they're younger. Explain the right ways. Don't just tell them don't do it because then they're just going to fear it and don't know why.
That's another like PTSD thing that I've come up with because like we perceive danger everywhere. And with my daughters, the
Yes.
older they get, the more dangers I see them around them. And it's just like, damn, I want to send my kid to school with body armor and a freaking 380, But you know how many felonies that is right there?
Yeah, we all be in prison by now.
Oh my
Jeez.
God.
Show up in a
Little Timmy
tank.
got shot because he didn't share the dodgeball. No. There's a reason why kids shouldn't have guns at such an early age because
Yeah.
my kids are, I feel like, okay, so the way I was raised in the 80s, like we had so much more freedom. We were so much more independent. And like these kids now are so sheltered and the internet and so on and so forth. So we always like forced them to go outside. Like we bought this big, like 10 foot by 10 foot, like chess table, for play with big pieces of chess. And we bought a badminton set. That's also a volleyball set, and it's one of the nice things of being out here, and they're very active, but this time of the year in Arkansas, it's so hot out, they definitely don't want to go outside. They do enough of that at school now, right?
That's crazy.
I think that's what good parenting looks like. You got to play to the situation and the kid because each kid's different. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, we even have unique problems. Like, I know through my PTSD, like, I don't have a whole lot of compassion or a sentimental attachment. So, like you said, your little girl crying, man, that really affects you. To
Yeah.
me, it really doesn't, and it should absolutely. But so there's certain things that I can kind of use from the PTSD to my advantage in a
Okay.
way. And I'm very particular about like disappointing and all that, but my kids know what the line is. They know exactly what the punishment will be. And I've explained to them 1,000 times before we even get to that point. So I don't know. I kind of like how we're going in this household, at least.
That's good. No, I know. I can see that being a challenge, especially with people like us that have those PTSDs. I hear from other veterans as too, where there's two veteran parents and they're trying to challenge their kids because they both have PTSD. I met them through the female through this program I went through, but she talks about her husband and I talked to him too, but the struggles they go through. But yet their kids are great because when one person's having their PTSD moment, the other parent knows exactly what to do and vice versa. So I think
Yeah,
that's how
yeah.
they've worked to control the situation so it doesn't affect their kids.
Yeah, it's that stupid part of our brains where we just see danger everywhere. And that's a hindrance because that's another reason why I lose my temper. It's just like you have to listen. You must know right and wrong. And then when my wife like is like so soft on it because I'm so hard, she's trying to bring that little balance in there, the yin and the yang. And like that pisses
Sure.
me off even more. It's kind of like, no, no, we need to be bad cop, no good cop in this situation. And she's like, no, you can't do this. And I'm just like, well, I'm not going to visit them at county jail or juvenile detention. It's just like, no, and like, it's such a minor issue that they did, and I'm already taking it to the total freaking extreme. And that's one of the things you learn in cognitive processing therapy is like, our brains always see the biggest danger in the world because it's just trash on the road. It's just trash on the road. Or, you're just it's just another left turn or right turn. Calm down. It's a lot of different things that now our brains are all jacked up on perceiving danger everywhere, and it's just not cool. And then with our daughters, I see danger, she doesn't see danger, and the simplest of not flushing the toilet, for instance.
Right. I see where you're going with that. When I was living in Denver with that one guy, again, that little girl, I had changed that role of always like telling the child what to do because I was always seeing it through him. So seeing him scold her for something so mediocre, it gave me a different perspective of how I was doing it too, and be like, okay, this isn't a big deal. And I would explain to him, try it this way, because he's still living in that same mindset of everything's a threat. So
Yeah.
maybe watching somebody else, or maybe stepping back and saying, is this really a threat, or am I perceiving it as something big because we're in that constant fear mode all the time? That's kind of what I've been teaching myself, I've noticed, even through just other encounters, through my situations every day I go through.
What about you, Alex, on seeing danger everywhere?
Everywhere.
Well, especially your
Every
gas
fucking
station
word, dude.
situation, like that
When
must
I
have been
when
hard
I
to.
that's a whole thing about this driving gig I applied for, and why I never applied for one after I got out of the military was because I'm too on, and this is why I haven't really tried hard to get the car running. I get too on edge when I'm behind the wheel, or if I'm not the person behind the wheel.
But let's go ahead and wrap this up because I noticed we got off topic a little bit, and then we'll just continue with that conversation. But I really liked what we kind of talked about with the kids because that is the biggest thing I noticed, just the biggest cycle when it comes to our aggression, not just from as a veteran, but any parent and what they pass down to their children. So as vets, I
Well,
feel like
every
that's a really
veteran can
good thing.
relate to this because they were a child, they had parents.
Yeah,
How
and
were
that's
they raised different than how they see their nephews, nieces, their kids being done?
right.
And we learned that, okay, a couple things. We learned that, we can't be treating them older than what they are. There's no problem giving them a little bit of more responsibility than their age, but not a lot more. We got to watch our cussing. We got to watch our tone. We got to make sure that they grow up at innocent young life because that's going to help them tremendously in the future on making decisions. But at the same time, we have to make sure we teach them right and wrong. And that's the balance. How do we enforce that right and wrong without losing our fucking cool as a veteran of PTSD? Because that's like the hardest thing with us being professionally trained OCD NCOs,
We also
right?
have to also remember too is like not just them being a kid, but remember when we were first not knowing something and but we're getting yelled at and we're confused as to why we're getting yelled at. We have to remember that's the state of mind they're also in is like, how do we expect them to know something when they've never known it before? So we have to remember, just like we used to teach our troops, show them like break it down for them by showing them, doing it with them, and then not micromanaging that I hate that word, but watching them do it themselves and then let them just do it on their own and just like these little steps and that'll start to make us
Yeah.
feel more secure in what we're seeing them do because then like okay they're getting what they're doing is right instead of just saying why aren't you doing this, why aren't you doing this, I thought I told you this, just because we told them. I forget and we're adults, just remember that too, we tend to forget all the time and it's just the constant repetition until it becomes second nature. I'm trying to get it
Yeah.
out.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, anything on that?
What have you learned with your foreseeing danger everywhere now? Have you been working on it? Because you said within 5 minutes, you kind of like apologize and checked yourself, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, when I am of it, when it's in them situations that, yeah, I get the way that I get, and I know it's because of um those predicaments that put me into those situations of that particular one like that. Yeah, it's like, oh shit, dude, well this, and I explain, hey dude, well this is where I'm coming from, cuz, and this is what I told, that's what I told my buddy too. Hey dude, sorry to fucking get on you about like this, but I'm also not sorry. This is where I'm coming from, man. In my expertise, that these are early grave situations. In the situations where I'm like at the store, and it's like a motherfucker, you want this shit, you want this. Like I'm trying to tell you, you're starting and acting up, and it's causing me to feel a certain way. And then I got to throw a person out the store. I don't really feel sorry about that. I mean, it might take me like about a week of like not seeing that person, and then them coming in and wait for them to hear, hey, dude, I'm sorry I acted up in your store. Well, man, cool. I'm sorry I had to throw you out because, but
Yeah,
there ain't no
happening.
5 minutes there. That's like about 5, 6 days, maybe.
Yeah, like I need to calm down too. I know those
Yeah.
days. I've thrown, well, not thrown, but I've gotten rid of people in my life just saying, "Hey, you're too much for me. I need to calm down." So do you, but like I need to like decompress and process what
Oh
just
my
happened to
God.
me.
Yes. Yes. After high school, I learned, especially because of high school girls, to stay the fuck away from drama. So if anybody brought any type of drama around me, peace. And you know what? If I loaned them money and they didn't pay me back, that's fine. Peace, because it's kind of like you just proved who you are kind of deal, right?
Yeah.
So, you
Yeah.
know, 86 them, right? 86. I got
I
no
mean,
problem 86 them. All right, let's go ahead and wrap it up.
Yeah,
Sorry,
this has
Brody
been
couldn't make
good.
it.
right
Until
on.
next time, we'll have like a whole new episode.